Did Jeffrey Epstein win the lottery in 2008? That's the ridiculous-sounding question that's been raised by internet sleuths who connected a business owned by financier and sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein to a Powerball drawing worth just under $85 million back in the late 2000s. The ticket was sold in a convenience store in Altus, Oklahoma, roughly 6 hours from Epstein's closest known property and about 2 hours outside of Oklahoma City. It's not known exactly when the ticket was sold, but when the Powerball drawing was held on Wednesday, July 2nd, there was a problem. Shortly before the drawing went live, a computer glitch prevented the drawing from being broadcast on television. Now, if you've watched evening television at all in your life, maybe with your parents or grandparents, you know that Powerball drawings are always public and independently audited to ensure that there's no corruption. In this case, even though the recording was not available, the drawing was audited by a local auditing firm, even though the numbers did not go out at 10 o'clock p.m. that night. Now, July 2008 is a notable time for Jeffrey Epstein. July 1st was the first day of Jeffrey Epstein's prison stay in Florida. Now, you might be saying, he went to jail on July 1st. The ticket was drawn on July 2nd. How is that possible? And certainly I'm not here to make any definitive statements about whether Jeffrey Epstein did in fact purchase this Powerball ticket. However, it is possible. There are what are called multi-draw or advanced play tickets, which allow you to play a number of days in advance. But whatever the case, when the numbers did go out, the person who purchased those numbers did not immediately come forward. And this was disappointing for the marketing executives at the Oklahoma Lottery because they like to put a face to a name and use it for advertising purposes. But it wasn't entirely unexpected. For privacy's sake, many lottery winners choose to establish what are called trusts that claim the money on their behalf. Now, trusts are opaque, meaning that the person organizing them is only required to disclose their involvement to the state lottery commission. To quote the Oklahoman, which is a large newspaper in the state, quote, "Under Oklahoma law, a lottery winner can remain anonymous as long as the trust's beneficiaries are disclosed to the lottery commission. Lottery officials are required to determine whether the beneficiaries owe back taxes or child support." Now, here's where people begin to speculate that Jeffrey Epstein may have been the one that received this large amount of money after this Powerball drawing. When a trust did eventually claim the money in a lump sum, which totaled about $29 million, the name of the trust was the Zorro Trust. If that word rings a bell, it's for a good reason. Jeffrey Epstein was very fond of the word Zorro, meaning fox in Spanish. Some people have speculated that he liked the sneaky, sort of under-the-radar imagery that word produces. He named his ranch in New Mexico the Zorro Ranch, the road to which is called the Zorro Ranch Road. He had a company called the Zorro Development Corporation, and he also had a trust called the Zorro Trust. We know about this from an article in the Albuquerque Journal on September 4th, 1994. Quote, "The Zorro Trust is headed by Jeffrey Epstein of New York City, who planned to form Zorro Ranch. Epstein couldn't be reached for comment." Now, as I said, trusts are by their very nature opaque, and the laws around them vary from state to state. But in Oklahoma, there's no way to know for sure who the individual behind the lottery winnings were unless they volunteered the information. There's no searchable registry of Oklahoma trusts that we could find out more information about the person behind this. So unfortunately, there's no way to know for sure that Epstein's Zorro Trust is the same as the Zorro Trust that won the lottery. And to that end, a follow-up article in the Oklahoman newspaper about 2 months after the initial winnings stated that the person who won the money was a woman who worked at a United grocery store in Altus, but that woman did not want to come out publicly. As I was doing research for this, I found several sources out there stating that Jeffrey Epstein won this money as though it was a fact. There is, unfortunately, no such conclusive proof either way. It may be the case that the woman who's said to have won enjoys the Zorro franchise of movies, or that the word means something to her personally. Maybe it was just a weird coincidence. There's plenty of people in this country, and that word is by no means unique to Jeffrey Epstein. Still, the incident was notable enough to spark the attention of one of the attorneys interviewing one of Epstein's personal pilots, Larry Vazosky, when he was deposed in 2009. According to this transcript, we can see that the plaintiff's attorney asks him, "Are you aware of the Zorro Trust winning an $85 million Powerball lottery in 2008? Epstein's pilot says no, and the pilot's lawyer says, "Say that again." Then the plaintiff attorney clarifies the Zorro Trust winning an $85 million, claiming the ticket for an $85 million Powerball ticket in 2008. Then Epstein's personal pilot says no. Now, I don't know if it means anything, but just as I'm reading this, it kind of strikes me as interesting that the plaintiff attorney notes that the Zorro Trust won the $85 million and then clarifies that they claimed the ticket for the $85 million Powerball ticket in 2008. It makes me wonder what about this incident was notable to the plaintiff attorney and whether or not they could have subpoenaed the Lottery Commission in Oklahoma to find out who the beneficiaries of that trust were. As we said, when a person with a trust claims the money, they have to disclose their identity to the Lottery Commission. Whatever the case, both sides of this weird episode are opaque. We obviously can't ask Jeffrey Epstein if he was the recipient of this money, and there's no one publicly willing to state who the woman was who claims she received it. It's just another odd story in the incredibly odd Jeffrey Epstein saga. Personally, I tend to think that it was a big, strange coincidence and that the lawyer was simply putting a feeler out when he asked Larry Vazosky if he knew anything about it, but let me know what you think. Was it Epstein who for some reason won this money in Oklahoma? Or if you're from this part of the country and know more information about it, I would be very excited to hear that as well. Thank you for watching.